throw from Justin Fields in that Jets offense, but it looked pretty good to start in their preseason opener against the Jets, Packers rather, a 30-10 win there. And to help us break down all things New York Jets, excited to get into it with Jake Asman. He joins us here on the Progressive Guest Line, host of the Jake Asman Show, host on ESPN New York. You can follow him on X as well, at Jake Asman. And this is a team that I feel like, Jake, a lot of people are down on this year, but the two people on this desk actually feel pretty good about them going over their season win total this year. What were some of your early takeaways from preseason game one and what you've seen so far at camp?
Well, it's good to hear that someone is positive about the Jets besides, just the diehard Jet fans who somehow, after all the pain, still find a way to be somewhat optimistic. But I'm with you guys. I mean, look, it was an impressive first game. Let's not go crazy. It is preseason and all that. But I think you saw the type of team that the Jets are going to try to be in the regular season. They want to dominate the lines of scrimmage. They want to run the football. We saw Braylon Allen make a couple plays in the running game. Fields, of course, had the rushing touchdown. And that's a lot of what you could expect to see when the games actually count. And the Jet defense, despite some of the quote-unquote names that aren't there anymore, right? Hassan Reddick, Javon Kinlaw, these guys weren't good last year. There's still a lot of talent that remains on the team. You get Jermaine Johnson back after he missed basically the entire season a year ago. There's talent there. 8 of the 11 starters from a season ago are returning. So between the defense and seemingly maybe some competent coaching, if Aaron Glenn's the real deal, this team could probably be a lot better than most expect. I don't know if they're a playoff team just yet, but I think what you saw on Saturday was a team that was ready to play, a team that played hard, a team that didn't turn the ball over, forced a couple turnovers, protected their quarterback no matter who it was. So there were definitely some encouraging signs, I think, early on if you're a Jet fan who's trying to look for something to point to that makes you feel a little better about this team, given how painful the last couple of years in particular have been.
All right, so last year, 21st in defensive EPA for New York. It was a free fall from where they were the year prior. But everything you can kind of gather from the Jake, you would speak this more. There's more poor performance than anything else. Like, I feel like this team could bounce back pretty quickly on defense. What do you make of what happened last year and how they can reach better heights this year?
100%. And I think a big part of that number you bring up, JVT, is what was the defensive EPA after week 5, after they fired their defensive-minded head coach, Robert Saleh, in the middle of the season, right? They were 2-3. Saleh got fired, and then the season completely spiraled from that point on. I think the Jet defense is definitely going to bounce back. I thought one of the smarter things Aaron Glenn did when he took over was he hired Steve Wilks to be his defensive coordinator. And Steve Wilks has been an NFL head coach before. He's been a really good DC at a bunch of different places. And once again, there's talent on this team. Will McDonald going into year 3 at 10.5 sacks last year. I already brought up Jermaine Johnson. Quinnen Williams is a former first-team All-Pro. I think you're going to get bounce-back seasons from a lot of the Jets' big-time players that, because of everything that went down a season ago, they didn't play at their best. Quinnen didn't have his best year. Sauce, he just got paid, but it was a down year for his standards. I think you saw in the limited action he had on Saturday, he's still that guy, that all-pro level player he was his first 2 seasons. Plus you have Quincy Williams and Jamie and Sherwood they re-signed. There is talent on this team. If there's a concern with the defense, the depth is not great. If Quinnen is out for a while or if there's an injury to one of the linebackers, it gets thin real quick. But I do think there's enough talent for the Jet defense to get back to being the top 10 unit they were the last couple of years before last season.
And you do bring up a good point, not only with Wilks, but that it's another defensive-minded head coach in Aaron Glenn. And you use that word competent. Are we going to get competent coaching in this thing with Aaron Glenn? How has he been received to this point and the mentality that he brings to this group? Are you feeling the culture shift so far?
I think the early signs are really positive, Stormy. He's come in and he has set the tone early that the country club environment that has kind of been around the Jets the last few years, that's over with. They're running Oklahoma drills in some of their practices this summer at training camp. They've had live tackling periods. They want to be a physical team. They want to be a team that can run the ball. They got the personnel to do it, and that's kind of the energy and the vibe he's trying to bring to the organization. I think he has total buy-in from the players for now because he is a former player. He does come from Detroit where he was really successful. So I think the players have bought in. I think getting off to a decent start, maybe a signature win early on against a division opponent or even week 1 against Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers, that will go a long way towards the players remaining bought in. But the early signs have been impressive. He's taken no nonsense from the media. He's authentically himself up there. All that is great, but he's still in that honeymoon phase. So I think there's a lot of Jet fans who are cautiously optimistic, and you hope it works because if not him, then who? Because this guy he was crazy enough to say the Jet job was his dream job. So that kind of speaks volumes about his passion for the team and his history with the organization. So everyone's certainly rooting for him. And, the initial signs are positive, but we've been down this path so many times with first-year Jet coaches. We get excited, and look what happens. So I'm trying to go into it cautiously optimistic as a fan, but he has been very impressive so far.
What about the other side of the ball? He brings over Tanner Angstrand with him, the passing game coordinator for the Lions last year. So how does this offense look different this season, and what have you seen from the install?
Well, the big question with him is going to be how much of what they did in Detroit does he bring with him now to the Jets? Because in Detroit, he had Jared Goff as the pass game coordinator, and Justin Fields is a way different, of course, style of player than Goff, who's more of a pure pocket drop-back quarterback. Fields, we know, can run, and the Jets, I brought up their personnel. Their offensive line, at least on paper, is the most talented unit they've had in about a decade plus. You got 3 legitimate running backs in Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, and Isaiah Davis, who has looked really good this summer at training camp. So can he design an offense that maximizes Fields' strength as a runner and also the talent he has in that running back room with the O-line play that should be significantly improved? So I think there's an unknown on what exactly Tanner Angstrand is as a play caller. He's never done it at the NFL level. He's only done it in college and in the XFL. But at least what we saw on Saturday was impressive. There were guys being schemed open. They ran some screens. They had some play action. A lot of things we just have not seen given how bad the offensive coaching for the Jets has been. So it's early, but I think the early signs with him, they've been pretty impressive so far. So I am cautiously optimistic with Tanner Angstrand.
Talking all things Jets with Jake Asman, host on ESPN New York, the Jake Asman Show as well. Garrett Wilson had over 1,000 yards every year of his career to this point. Justin Fields, as you say, is a mobile quarterback. What is the arm? But Garrett has done this year after year with a collection of different quarterbacks, too. So do you think this is another year where he's able to have a 1,000-yard season regardless of who's throwing him the ball?
It's probably one of my favorite bets you could find, Stormy. If you could find odds on Garrett Wilson over 1,000 yards, I would take it. This guy has played with some horrendous quarterbacks in his career. We're talking about 8 through his first 3 years, and he's got over 1,000 in each of those years. Now he's playing with a guy who he already played with in college and has that built-in chemistry. So I think that's going to help him. That Ohio State connection will pay off. And the Jets have at least said this publicly a lot. They want to get the ball to Garrett Wilson. I think even though Garrett statistically last year had his best year with Rodgers throwing him the football, once Devontae Adams got there was a drop-off in the total amount of targets, especially targets in the red zone. So I think you're going to see the Jets really go out of their way to feed Garrett Wilson the ball. One thing you saw on Saturday, if you want to take away on Garrett, they used him in motion a lot more. He was getting free releases at the line of scrimmage. They want to feature him in the offense. They paid him the big money, which kind of shows you how they feel about him internally. I think Garrett's going to have the best year of his career, assuming he's healthy. And I definitely think he's going to go over 1,000 yards because, I mean, you get Zach Wilson, Tim Boyle, the ghost of Joe Flacco, Mike White. There's just so much pain. You've been saying all these names, given how bad it's been at that position since Garrett's been in the league. But if you want to bet that I feel really good about, Garrett Wilson over 1,000 yards, I think he's going to have a big season for the Jets.
All right, so win total, 6.5, under -145. What are your expectations with that win total in mind?
It's funny because it was 5.5 for a while. Now it's starting to move up a little bit. I don't love it as much at 6.5 because I'm just scared off by, the uncertainty with Fields. And as much as I've been singing the praises of Aaron Glenn so far, it's still a first-year coach. So there's an unknown. But if I had to bet, I would take the over. I think this team can be scrappy. They can win 7 or 8 games. And if they do that, I think there'll be a lot of Jet fans, depending on kind of how they get to the record, what it looks like. I think a lot of Jet fans would be encouraged. 6.5 kind of feels right to me, like it's right in that range. And if Fields breaks out like we saw Sam Darnold do a year ago and Baker the last couple of years down in Tampa, maybe it could be more than that. But I would take the win total over if I had to, but I'm not as confident in that as I would be if it was only 5.5, which I've been checking this stuff all the time. It was. So now I guess the Jets look good against the Packers on Saturday, and now we're moving them up a full win.
Jake, you're awesome. Thank you so much for the time today. We appreciate it.
Anytime, guys. Thanks for having me.
Jake Asman, again, ESPN New York. Check out the Jake Asman Show.